Hi all, I'm Shweta Reddy, Assistant Professor in the Department of Electronics and Communication Engineering from R.M.K College of Engineering and Technology. In this video, we are going to discuss about constructors and types of constructors in Java. Now, first we'll see about constructor. What are constructors? Normally, constructor is a specialized method for initializing object. Now you will be asking me why and what is the reason for initializing or creating objects. First, what are objects? Objects are nothing but they are the real world entities, that is physical entities. Object will be having both properties and behavior. These are all covered in the previous video. Normally, why are they created? That is, what is the reason for creating objects? Objects are created in order to call a non-static function which is not present inside the main method, but instead they will be present inside the class. That is the reason why we are creating objects. That is, in short, I can say to call the function which are not present in the main method, instead they are present inside the class. Now, coming back to the constructors. As I said earlier, constructor is a specialized method for initializing objects. Now we'll see the syntax for object creation. The syntax for object creation is class name, object name equal to new constructor. Okay. Here the class name and the constructor name should be the same always. For example, if I take the class name as student, the constructor name should also be the same student. An object name could be anything. Here I have took as S1. Then new is nothing but a keyword. Now the syntax for object creation with our example will become as student S1 equal to new constructor, whereas student is nothing but the class name, S1 is the object name, new which is nothing but a keyword, and again student which is nothing but the constructor. So as I said earlier, the syntax for object creation is class name, object name equal to new constructor. Whereas here with our example it became student S1 equal to new student. Student is the class name, S1 is the object name, new is the keyword, and student is the constructor. So this is what about the syntax for creating objects. Now coming back to the constructors. Remember this, in Java, constructor is a block of code which is similar to the method. Constructors and methods are not same, but the working is almost same. Constructors and methods are entirely different, whereas constructor will not have any data types, whereas methods will have data types. The difference between the constructor and method you will be seeing in the next slide. Now you just know this difference. Constructor will not have any data type, methods will have data types. And when the constructors will be called means they will be called when an instance of the class is created. And at the time of calling the constructor itself, the memory for the object also will be allotted. That is, while creating the constructor itself, the memory for the object will be created. And as I said earlier, constructor is a special type of method which is used to initialize objects. I hope you remember this. And every time when an object is created using new keyword, at least one constructor will be called. And it calls default constructor if there is no constructor available in the class. Normally there are two types of constructor. One is default constructor and parameterized constructor. Every time when an object is created using that new keyword, at least one constructor will be called, and that constructor will be default constructor. When it will be default constructor means if there is no constructor available in the class. You will be seeing the two types of constructors, that is default constructor and the parameterized constructor, in the next coming slides. Now coming to the syntax for creating constructor. As I said earlier, the class name and the constructor name should be same. Now look here in this example, the class name. The class name is nothing but the test, and the constructor name is also test. So class name and test name is same. And coming to the, and here you will be typing the body of the constructor. So this is what about the syntax for the constructor. Here you just remember that the class name and the constructor name should be same. The next, coming to the rules or properties of constructor. While creating constructor, one must remember three things. First one is the name of constructor must be the name of the class. The second one is it must be declared as public. And the third one is it should not have any return type. Again I am repeating, the constructor name and the class name should be same. The constructors must be declared as public, and the constructor should not have any return type. So these three things one must remember while creating constructor. And another important note one have to remember is the constructor is entirely different from method, but the constructor and the method will be working similar, but they are entirely different. whereas constructor name should be the same name as that of the class, whereas method name should not be the class name. It can be any alphanumeric or alphabetic characters. And constructors don't have any return types, whereas methods will be having return type. So this is the main difference you have to know about constructor and method. Now let us see an example program for constructor. Here I have used a class name as student. Then I have two variables here. These two variables are instance variables. What do you mean by instance variables? Instance variables are nothing but which are created inside the class but outside the main method. So inside the class and outside the method. So these two variables are called as instance variables. For instance variables to be inside the program, an object must be created. So if there is any instance variables in the program, the object must be created. Then I have started with the main program. Then I have created objects. Why I have created objects? Because of these instance variables I have created objects. Then what is the syntax for creating object? Class name, object name equal to new keyword and constructor. The class name here is, yes, student. The object name can be anything. I have took here as S1 and there is a new keyword and the student again. Why student again? Because the class name and the constructor name should be same. Now I am going to print that variables, that is name and roll number, with the help of these objects. So S1 dot name and S1 dot roll number. So what would be the output? Did I initialize anything for name and roll number? No, right? I didn't initialize anything for name and roll number. So output would be null for name and 0 for roll number. For example, for in the place of name I have given like string name is equal to ABC and int roll number is equal to 123. Now the output would have become ABC and 123. If I don't initialize anything, it will be giving null for name and 0 for roll number. So this is what about the constructor program. Next, coming to the types of constructors. As I said earlier, there are two types of constructors. One is default constructor, another one is parameterized constructor. What is default constructor is, if the constructor has without any arguments, then it is called as default constructor. Look here in the example, I have student. Student is nothing but the constructor name. And inside the parenthesis, I did not pass any arguments. So this is an example for default constructor. And coming to the parameterized constructor, if the constructor is passed with parameters, then it is called as parameterized constructor. Look here, another example, the same student. Student is nothing but the constructor name. And inside the parenthesis, I have passed two parameters. One is string str, another one is int. So this is what about the default constructor and parameterized constructor. Default constructor is constructor without any arguments and parameterized constructor is constructor with parameters. So I hope this is clear. We will see the programming example for types of constructor in the next coming slides. Now let us see an example for default constructor. Coming to default constructor. What is default constructor first? Constructor without any arguments is called default constructor. Now let us see the programming example. Look here, the class name is nothing but student. Then I have two variables here. These two variables are called instance variables. Why I am calling it as instance variables is they are declared inside the class but outside the method. Then for accessing these two variables, I have to create an object. So without creating this object, I can't access these two variables. Then I have constructor. How did I identify this as constructor? I have identified this as constructor by the class name and the constructor name should be same. That is one point. The second point is it should not have any data type. If it has data type, then it is called method. Then inside the parenthesis, I did not pass any arguments. So this is called default constructor. And inside the constructor I have initialized name as ABC and roll number as 123. Then I am starting with the main program. Then I have created object. Why I have created object? In order to access those instance variables, I have to create an object. So what is the syntax for creating object? Class name, object name equal to new constructor. The class name is student, S1 is the object name, it can be anything, and is equal to new keyword and the constructor, which is nothing but student. Then I am going to print that name and roll number. I am going to print that name and roll number with the help of the object, that is s1.name, s1.roll number. Why I have used that s1.name and s1.roll number is because I have given instance variables here. For accessing those instance variables, I have to use the object which have been created. So that's why S1 dot name and S1 dot roll number. And the final output is ABC and 1, 2, 3. I hope this is clear. Now let us see about parameterized constructor. First, what is parameterized constructor? Constructor with parameters is called parameterized constructor. Now we will see the program. In the program, we will be using both the types of constructor, that is default constructor and parameterized constructor, so that you will be understanding better. Now look at the program. I have class name as student. Then I have two variables here. These two variables are called instance variables. Why I am calling them it as instance variables? Because they are created inside the class but outside the main method. Then I have constructor here. How did I identify this as constructor? Because the name of the class and name of the constructor should be same, and also I don't have any data types here. And inside the parenthesis I did not pass any argument, so this is called default constructor. And inside default constructor I am initializing name as ABC and roll number as 1, 2, 3. Then I have another constructor here with two parameters. So this is called parameterized constructor, and I have initialized name with str and roll number with n. Then I am going to start with the main program. Then I have created object here. While creating object inside the constructor, if we don't pass any arguments, then the control will search for default constructor. And inside the constructor, if we pass two arguments, then the controls will search for parameterized constructor. Just remember this. So for syntax for creating object is class name object name equal to new constructor. So class name is student, S1 I have given S1 for this object and S2 for this object, new and constructor. And inside that parenthesis, if we don't pass any arguments, the control will search for default constructor. And inside this constructor, if we pass two arguments or two parameters, then the control will search for parameterized constructor. Now I am going to print the statements. Why I have created, I'm going to print the statements with object, because I have used instance variables. So for accessing those instance variables, I have to use objects. So that's why S1 dot name, S1 dot roll number, S2 dot name, S2 dot roll number. So what is S1 dot name? Which is nothing but ABC. S1 dot roll number 1, 2, 3. S2 dot name DEF. S2 dot roll number 4, 5, 6. So the output would be ABC 1, 2, 3, DEF and 4, 5, 6. I hope this is clear. In this video, we have seen what are constructors and what are the types of constructors. In summary, constructor is a specialized method for initializing object. There are two types of constructors. They are default constructor and parameterized constructor. Constructor without arguments is called default constructor, and constructor with parameters is called parameterized constructor. Hope you all have understood. Thank you.